Howdy doody, my name is Susie and today I thought I would share with you how I'm making a hot pepper jelly. Actually, this is a mild version of the hot pepper jelly. I did make a very hot pepper jelly and in that recipe I used a habanero pepper. So the recipe is going to be the same. The level of heat or the units of heat in your jelly pepper is really going to depend on what kind of hot pepper you're going to use to spice up your solution. Hot pepper of choice, so for my mild version of this hot pepper, I'm going to be using the jalapeno peppers. For a hot version, you're going to use something like a habanero or something that's hotter, Scotch bonnet or something else. The recipe is quite simple, and for this low sugar pepper jelly, I'm going to be using a no sugar required pectin. Now for the recipe, we're going to need 4 cups of finely chopped sweet bell peppers, the color of your choice. We're going to need 1 or 2 of the chili peppers, depending on the heat that you want. We're going to need 1 full cup of sugar or sugar alternative. So the sugar alternative would be monk fruit sugar, or you can just use 1 cup of regular sugar cane. We're going to need 1 cup of apple juice, and if you're making this as a no sugar recipe, in that you would be using the monk fruit sugar, then you'd probably want to take into account the type of apple juice that you're buying, make sure it's unsweetened, and if you are diabetic, you'd have to see what the actual grams of sugar are per jar once you make the recipe. You're also going to need 1.5 cups of apple cider vinegar or a sweet vinegar of your choice. And we're going to also need about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that just brightens up and brings all the flavors together. Got a red, an orange, and a yellow. And bell peppers are extremely high in vitamin A and vitamin C. They actually have 3 times the amount of vitamin C as an orange. Now the bell peppers, they're going to vary in flavor from green to yellow, orange to red. So red is going to be the sweetest, and the green bell peppers are going to have the least amount of sweetness. Now the bell peppers are all the same. The color just depends on the time of ripening. So the green bell peppers are going to be the ones that are least ripe. The red or the dark bell peppers that are dark red in color are going to be the ripest ones on the vine. This is going to yield anywhere between 4 to 6 jars, and it really depends on the size of your pot, how finely you chop your peppers, how long you cook it, etc. So we're going to be processing our jars in the oven using the hot sterilizing method as opposed to the water bath. So I've got my 6 jars. I'm going to pop them in the oven at 225 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. That'll sterilize the jars. So we're going to need to boil our lids for 5 minutes, and I'll show you once we go to process our jars to make them shelf stable, we're going to need everything hot at the same time. Our jars, our lid, and our solution. I'm also using a 5-quart heavy stainless steel pot in order to make my jelly. So some of the other things that you're going to need is definitely some gloves if you're handling the hot peppers. If you want to make this as a sweet pepper jelly and not using any hot peppers, you don't have to worry about it, but definitely use gloves if you're using any kind of pepper with heat. We're going to need just a spoon to stir. I've got a magnetic lid lifter, a good sharp knife for dicing, a couple of measuring cups, and then we're ready to go. So the first thing that we're doing is obviously I've got my jars in the oven and I'm going to start sterilizing them. So I normally use the Bernadine's no sugar required pectin. That brand is no longer available to me. It's discontinued. I just can't get it. So now I'm trying Ball. This is the no sugar required pectin. And this is a little bit different. I've only used it once. I think the consistency is similar to the Bernadine's, but the the amounts are going to be different. So for this recipe, and this is, I went to the Ball website and just looked up the measurements. I'm going to need 4.5 tablespoons of the no sugar required pectin in order to set this recipe, which is going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 jars. 4.5. So 1 tablespoon is approximately 15 milliliters. So I've got my 4.5 tablespoons of the pectin, and I'm just going to leave that off to the side. So I've washed my peppers, and I'm going to dice my sweet peppers finely chopped. And this is going, 3 large peppers is going to give you approximately 4 cups, which is what we're looking for. And then in addition, we want to add some heat. So I'm using the jalapeno pepper in this recipe, which is a very mild version. It just has a little tiny bite. I did previously make a very hot and spicy by using 1 habanero pepper in this recipe, and it's quite spicy. So if you like spice, you can substitute for 1 habanero. It's amazing how hot it is. The jalapeno is much milder, and that's what I'm going to be using in this recipe. Now, if you go online, if you're not sure which pepper to use, there's a lot of tables or scales online that you can look up the heat of individual peppers, and it's called the Scoville Heat Unit Scale, or the Scoville Scale. And this measures heat units depending on the type of pepper that you're using. So for example, the bell pepper has no heat, so 0, it's sweet. The jalapeno pepper has between 2,500 and 10,000 units of heat, which sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's very low on the scale of heat. In comparison to the habanero, which is this pepper, and I only used 1 in my previous recipe, the habanero is 100,000 to 350,000 units of heat. So you can tell the difference. It's a dramatic difference between a jalapeno and a habanero. The habanero is also equivalent to a Scotch bonnet. And for another pepper that you may recognize, that would be the cayenne pepper, which we used in order to make the cayenne pepper salve for arthritis, etc. That is 25,000 to 50,000 units of heat. So you can see how much, it's like a quarter of the habanero. So just to give you an indication of how hot those peppers can actually get. So just be careful when you're making this. So you may want to look up the different peppers depending on what's available in your grocery store to make sure that you're using a pepper that you're going to enjoy and it's not going to be too hot to eat. And you're making something that is delicious. Now it is nice, and I do like the spice of the chili peppers, and they go great on crackers with cheese or just cheese. There's just something about that combination. And the pepper jelly is going to be sweet, sour, and hot if you add the chili peppers. So we want to finely chop the bell peppers, and you want to make it into a small dice, because by the time it's cooked into your jelly pepper, you want it to be small pieces, because like I said, chances are you're going to be using this on a cracker with cheese, etc. And you don't want big, huge clumps. Also, we want to quickly soften the peppers before we make the jelly, just to make the jelly easy to spread, like I said, on a cracker or any food that you're using. Now, I find that dicing the peppers by hand, you get the perfect little pieces that are not only easy to spread. They keep your jelly pretty clear. I don't know if you can tell, but this is the previous pepper jelly that I've made. Now, the peppers are also considered a nightshade vegetable, so if that's something that is of concern to you, then perhaps a different type of jelly would be in order, like an spiced apple jelly, or there's a lot of different jellies that you can use. So now I've got my 3 peppers all diced up, and you can see it's shy of 4 cups, but that's fine. You want approximately 4 cups. So for my mild version of my hot chili pepper, I'm going to be using 2 jalapeno peppers, but I am going to be removing the seeds. Now, like I said, the heat really depends on your taste. I can tell you that a very hot chili pepper, and this is a recipe that I made previously, the exact same recipe, but I only used 1 habanero pepper. These guys are super hot. So just be selective with the type of heat that you want. But if you want something that is tasty but mild, then remove the seeds as I'm doing in these jalapeno peppers. Or if you want no heat at all, don't use any peppers at all. So I'm going to dice these smaller than I did the red peppers, because I just want little flecks of the jalapeno going throughout my jelly, and I don't want one big piece in any particular spot. And also you might be thinking, well, it would be a lot easier to put the peppers through the food processor. But I find that using the food processor, unless you're not very careful, it doesn't really give you nice pieces. And if you over process, it'll just make your jelly cloudy. It won't be a clear jelly with all the little bits and different colors of pepper in it, which looks really, really nice. And this is for the mild version of the hot chili peppers. And what I will do is so there is a little tiny bit of heat, but it's definitely tolerable. And once it's mixed with all the rest of our ingredients, I think it's going to be perfect. So now that I've got everything chopped up, I'm going to move all my ingredients over to the stove, and I'll show you the next step. So now I'm at the stove and I've got my station all prepared. I've got my apple juice, my diced peppers and hot pepper. I've got my vinegar, my pectin, my sugar, and my salt. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to soften these peppers. So I'm just going to add all of the peppers to my pot. And that was 4 cups of the sweet peppers, the 2 jalapeno peppers. And then I've got a little bit more than 1 cup of apple juice. It's not the end of the world, but you want to try and stay consistent so that you're getting between the 4 to 6 jars. And all I'm going to do is over medium-high heat, I'm just going to bring this to a bit of a boil, and I'm going to let it boil or cook for 5 minutes. I just want to tenderize the little bits of pepper so that they're not nice and soft and spreadable once they actually go on a cracker. Peppers up to a boil in that apple juice, and I've just turned the heat down to a medium, and I'm just going to let it cook for 5 minutes. I've got the timer on. So now we've got our hot solution, but we need to cool this down, and we want to cool it down for about 10 minutes. So at this point, I'm going to add half a teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to be adding all of the vinegar at once. And because the vinegar is cool, that's why I reserved it, because it will help cool down our solution. So now we're just going to let this sit and cool for about 10 minutes until it's cooled to the touch. Once it's cooled, we'll then be able to add our no sugar required pectin, and it will dissolve in the solution. So our solution is cool to the touch. It's been 15 minutes and we've got our lids boiling. I've just added my measuring cup to sterilize it. And now, while our solution is cooled, we're going to take our 4.5 tablespoons of no sugar required pectin, and we're going to add it to our solution. And we're going to stir it in until it's completely dissolved. And remember, if this solution was hot, the no sugar added pectin would clump. But you can see that it's quite easily dissolving right into our cooled solution. I'm just going to stir it to make sure, absolutely sure, that it is equally dissolved throughout all of this pepper solution. Okay, so I think it's dissolved. Now we're going to turn our stove on high, and we're going to bring this solution to a rolling boil. Once we have our rolling boil, we're going to be able to add all our sugar. So now I'm just getting my station ready. I've got my sugar. I've got a little plate which I'll use to test my jam to see if it's set. I've got some tongs. This will help me remove the jars from the oven. And I've just got an extra large measuring cup, and I use this just to hook on my small measuring cup that I'm going to be using to ladle in the jars of jam. And it's been 2.5 minutes. It's starting to come to a rolling. So that's a good rolling boil. That's been 4 minutes. So now that we've got our rolling boil, we're going to take our 1 cup of sugar or monk fruit sugar. We're going to add it all at once. You want to stir that sugar in to make sure it is dissolved. Okay. I think that's nicely stirred in. It's all melted. And now we're going to bring this up to a hard boil. So it's going to come to a rolling boil. It's going to take a couple of minutes. You can see it's already starting to roll onto itself. And we're going to bring it up to a hard boil where you can't stir it down. And then we're going to time it for 1 minute. So here it goes. This happens quite quickly. So you can see that's a hard boil. Now we're going to time this for 1 minute. And we're just going to let it boil hard for 1 minute. Make sure you've got your timer. That's 1 minute. Then we're going to turn off our stove. Turn that right off. You could add a pat of butter if you were getting foam. And I'm just going to stir it. Make sure everything is nice and evenly distributed. So now we're going to start packing our jars. I'm going to be making 2 jars at a time. One, 2 jars. So I've got my sterilized jar, and like I said before, this makes it very easy to measure out the exact. You want to get as much of the pepper as you can in a cup. We're going to leave 1/4 of an inch head space. You want to make sure your jars are perfectly clean. And then we're going to add our hot lids. Remember, our lids are hot. They've been boiling and they're sterilized. Everything has to be super hot. Our solution, our jars, and our lids. And you just want to finger tighten the lids. And I'm just going to set these off to the side. Grab 2 more. Keep your gloves handy because this is hot. You want a 1/4 inch head space. Our lids, I can turn them off now. So there you go, we got 5 jars of jelly, and I was going to actually put some in my plate to test it, but I can tell it's gelling on the jar. So it is setting, which is why I didn't end up testing it on my plate. Now we're going to leave these off to the side. You're not going to touch them, and you're going to let them sit for 24 hours. As they process, you'll hear a vacuum suction. The lids will pop and they will become concave, and that's when you know that the jars have sealed, and then you can tighten your lids. But for now, finger tighten the lids and let it sit for 24 hours. Now it's only been about 10 minutes. You can see how the lids have sucked in and created that seal. They're concave. This one is not. It hasn't popped yet. So I'm waiting for that to cool down, but you can see the indentation, which means your jars are sealed. It has not been 24 hours, and our jars are still hot, but they have been sealing all except for one. But I did manage to get a little bit of a sample from the remnants of the pot, but you can see it's definitely a really nice soft jelly. And you've got all the little bits of fruit in it, which makes it very attractive. So let's taste it. It's very delicious for a reduced sugar pepper jelly. It's sweet, it's tangy, you can taste the pepper, so you have the flavor of the peppers, and there is the slightest hint, ever so slight hint of heat. This would go delicious with cheese. So this batch I yielded 5. My last batch I yielded 4, and it really depends on the size of the peppers, how much evaporation, etc. But you're going to get between 4 to 6 jars of the pepper jelly with this recipe. So this is a great way to reduce the sugar in your pepper jelly, whether you're just using the 1 cup of sugar cane or you're using the monk fruit sugar. It's considerably lower than those pepper jelly recipes out there that require 4, 5, or 6 cups of sugar. You get all the flavor without all of the sugar. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you try this and you like it, I hope you share it. Until next time, happy homemaking. Delicious.